me offer a sincere welcome to all of you out there in Zoomlandia. This is the first session of four really, of Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home. My name is Jim Flynn, a retired priest of the Archdiocese of Louisville.
And I'm Corey Lockhart, and I teach and facilitate primarily about compassion, nonviolence, and compassionate communication.
Thank you, Corey. I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
You know, since first reading Laudato Si, published in 2015, it's been my concern to spread this urgent letter of Pope Francis. I hope that tonight's session and those to follow on the last Tuesdays of February, March, and April will be enriching for all of us. Our hope, I think, is expressed so well by Pope Francis when he writes in paragraph 19 of Laudato Si, quote, "Our goal is not to amass information or to satisfy curiosity, but rather to become painfully aware, to dare to turn what is happening to our world into our own personal suffering, and thus to discover what each of us can do about it." During these sessions, Corey and I are joined by another friend of ours, David Horvath. And I'm very proud to acknowledge the technical contributions of my great nephew, David Flynn, who will manage the Zoom sessions from Nashville. So let's get started with tonight's first session. We hope you've had a chance to read the introduction, as well as chapters 1 and 2. We know that's a lot to read and discuss, but future sessions will cover less material over 2 chapters each month. Corey and I will give a brief glimpse of the presentation tonight, of the chapter tonight, followed by breakout rooms for discussion.
And so there are, at this point, 93 of us on Zoom, and I want to offer some invitations about how we will be on Zoom together. You may have noticed that when you were entered into the room, you were on mute, and we'll ask you to stay on mute, except for when you're in breakout rooms. And then there will also be a little bit of time to hear from a few people at the end of the call, and otherwise we'd ask that you stay on mute. The other request that we have is about how we use the chat. When we are in presentation mode, there will be a couple of times when we'll invite you to put something in the chat, and when you're not particularly or specifically invited, we would ask that you refrain from commenting in the chat. And we ask that because as presenters, it can be really, really distracting, especially when there the potential for 90 people to be commenting. It can be really distracting. And so we'll ask you, there will be times when we'll ask you to respond there, and most of the time we'll ask that you not do that. The one last thing that I'll say about the chat is that you might notice sometimes that David Horvath will be putting in comments, maybe summarizing or emphasizing something that's been said. So thank you for, I hope, saying yes to those invitations, and of course, thank you for saying yes to the invitation to being here with us tonight.
So let's begin with a prayer. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures.
You embrace us with your tenderness. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists.
Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty.
Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one,
O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes.
Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction.
Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth.
Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light.
We thank you for being with us each day.
Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace.
Amen.
Amen.
So we begin with this discussion with the introduction to Laudato Si, about 16 paragraphs. And first of all, to note that the letter is addressed to all the peoples of the world, and not just Catholics.
It opens with a review of the previous Catholic statements on the environment, going back to St. Francis of Assisi, and citing also the initiatives of the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew of the Orthodox Church, as well as Protestant and Sufi sources.
This sister now cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed her.
We ourselves are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made up of her elements. We breathe her air, and we receive life and refreshment from her waters.
Her cry, united with that of the poor, stirs our conscience to acknowledge our sins against creation.
And so at this point, let's just pause for a few moments to let these words sink in. And I would invite you in that pause simply to notice where in your body you feel these words.
For human beings to destroy the biological diversity of God's creation,
for human beings to degrade the integrity of the earth by causing changes in its climate, by stripping the earth of its natural forests or destroying its wetlands.
for human beings to contaminate the earth's waters, its land, its air, and its life, these are sins.
For to commit a crime against the natural world is a sin against ourselves and a sin against God. And so again, we pause. And I invite you to read these words again and to put in the chat as you read these words or as you were hearing these words, what is one emotion that arises in you? And so this is an opportunity to put something in the chat. Reading these words, what is an emotion that arises in you? Shame, I see. What else? Profound sadness. sorrow, pity, sadness, shame, anger and helplessness, sadness and urgency, concern, sadness, anger, sorrow, vulnerability. And I want to note also that as we notice these feelings, this is why we do the work together, because we need each other to work through all of those things.
So we continue. Concern for the environment must be an integral and urgent part of the church teaching.
Francis said, I urgently appeal for a new dialogue and a new and universal solidarity.
He says, furthermore, all of us can cooperate as instruments of God for the care of creation, each according to his or her own culture, experience, involvements, and talents. And so we move on to chapter 1.
The first chapter is a frank look at the facts of our world so that the reader might become painfully aware of the ways we've not been providing protection and care of the very place we call home.
This chapter instructs us to turn what is happening to the world into our own personal suffering, and thus to discover what each of us could do about it.
It paints in detail a dire picture of what's happening.
A variety of forms of pollution,
Increasing deforestation,
a disturbing warming of the climate,
the depletion of natural resources, and especially quality drinking water,
the loss of biodiversity,
the decline of quality of human life and relationships,
and the global inequality gap between the poor and the rich.
And so at this point, we again just pause to take this in, and suspecting that it might be overwhelming, I would invite you in that pause to take a couple of just deep breaths.
There is consensus among scientists that this picture is a real glimpse into the unsustainable state of our world.
Most of us in the global north live in a far remove from these stark realities of our world.
And Francis emphasizes that the climate is a common good, belonging to all and meant for all.
And recognizes that a number of scientific studies indicate that most global warming in recent decades is due to the great concentration of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen oxides, and others, released mainly as a result of human activity.
Francis recognizes an urgent need to develop policies so that in the next few years, the emission of carbon dioxide and other highly polluting gases can be drastically reduced. For example, substituting for fossil fuels and developing sources of renewable energy.
He challenges those who blame population growth instead of extreme and selective consumerism.
Climate change is a global problem with grave implications: environmental, social, economic, political, and for the distribution of goods.
He laments that the poor, who are least responsible for causing the problem, are disproportionately vulnerable to its harmful effects.
In Francis' view, we cannot combat environmental degradation unless we also attend to the causes related to human and social degradation.
The human environment and natural environment deteriorate or thrive together.
Most of the worst environmental harm affects the poor most directly.
Inequality affects not only individuals, but also countries, creating an ecological debt, whereby wealthier countries prosper while poorer ones get poorer, not only economically, but environmentally, as well as through the plunder of human and natural resources. And that is the introduction in chapter 1. And so this is a point at which we're going to go into small groups so that you have a time to share with one another, because again, we do this work best when we do it together. And so in your small group, the first thing that we invite you to do is to introduce yourself to one another. Your name is probably on your screen, and still there is some value to us speaking our name into a group. And so once you're in your breakout group, there will be 4 of you probably. Say your name, your parish, or the community that you come from, and why you chose to participate in this series. After you've introduced yourself, then we'll invite you into thinking about these questions and really taking turns to answer one or more of them. So I'll read the questions. You'll also get these questions. You don't have to remember them. They'll be shared with you in your small group, assuming technology cooperates with us. But here are the questions. When you hear talk of environmental problems and pollution, what are your feelings and reactions, or what is your first response? Where and how do you hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor? And does this, or how does this, affect your actions? And what do you do when you feel powerless? So those are the questions that we invite you to think about and to share about. Wanting to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak, what I would encourage you to do is to have a timekeeper, someone who will, with probably your phone, maybe set a timer for about 2 minutes and give each person a chance to speak. And then after that, you might do another round that is timed, or maybe you'll go into a freer conversation style. You'll be in the breakout for 15 minutes. And so what that means is, and I believe there's a counter that you'll be able to see the time. After 14 minutes, there will be a countdown timer, and you'll get something on your screen that will say, join the room. You can either go back to the big room, I forget exactly what the words are, At that point, you can either come right back into this room or wait until the timer goes all the way down and you're automatically brought back into this room. So with that, I think we're going to send you into the breakout rooms. Oh, one last thing. Father Jim and I will be visiting some of the breakouts. We're not there to participate, but simply to hear a little bit about some of the discussion that is happening. So if you see one of us or see our names, know that we're just listening in.
They're picking their favorites.
Definitely not. And I think everyone is back. So welcome back. I hope that whether the technology is new or familiar for you, you were able to engage in some conversation with one another. I suspect that the time was shorter than what you would have wanted. We will have a second breakout group. And really, again, the hope is that these conversations, things that are in your mind, that you'll continue talking and thinking and reflecting about these after you get off the call and between the 4 calls that we have and beyond that. So this is really what we're offering is a beginning, or if you're well past those beginning steps, a continuation of your journey. With that, we're going to have another presentation of chapter 2 of Laudato Si that Father Jim and I will share with you.
And I will discuss also chapter 2 of Laudato Si. The introduction and first chapter are rather long. This chapter is entitled The Gospel of Creation. Writing from the wisdom of the Judeo-Christian tradition, Pope Francis writes that the biblical accounts offer a comprehensive view that expresses the tremendous responsibility of humankind for creation.
The intimate connection among all creatures, and that the natural environment is a collective good, the patrimony of all humanity, and the responsibility of everyone.
The story of creation is key for reflecting on the relationship between human beings and other creatures.
Human life is grounded in 3 fundamental and closely intertwined relationships: with God, with our neighbor, and with the earth itself.
These 3 vital relationships have been broken, both outwardly and within us. This rupture is sin.
And so let's take a moment again to pause. And I invite you to consider this question: where or how do you feel that rupture? Where or how do you feel that rupture most deeply?
Francis writes, the ecological crisis calls for a multicultural and multidisciplinary dialogue that includes spirituality and religion.
Faith offers ample motivation to care for nature and for the most vulnerable of their brothers and sisters.
In the Bible, The God who liberates and saves is the same God who created the universe. And these two divine ways of acting are intimately and inseparably connected.
The earth is a gift, not a possession. It was given to us to administer, not to destroy.
Hence, we must respect the laws of nature, as all of creation has its own goodness.
A spirituality which fails to recognize Almighty God as creator will provide no support as we end up worshiping other worldly powers, usurping the place of God, even to the point of claiming an unlimited right to trample his creation underfoot.
We can ascend from created things to the greatness of God and to his God and God's loving mercy. And creation in the risen Christ continues onward until the fullness of time of God.
Human beings are responsible for the creation entrusted to their, or actually our, we're human beings, to our care.
Our freedom is a mystery that can promote development or cause degradation.
The entire material universe speaks of God's love, God's boundless affection for us. Soil, water, mountains, everything is, as it were,
A caress of God.
a caress of God. Thank you. And before we go on, I'd like to invite you to think about this beautiful world that we live in and to put in the chat where you experience that caress of God. Where do you experience the caress of God? On hikes, in a sunset, on the beach, in the woods, among the trees, in the garden, sunrise, in the forest, laying in the grass. I love that. Out walking today, walking through the park, at the beach, and in my garden, near bodies of water, the Ohio River, on a sunny day. Hikes, lakes, anywhere outdoor, each morning at first light, in the morning air at dawn, in my next breath. Love, sunset, in the stillness of dawn, Mississippi River, at the ocean when the moon is full. With my family. And so these are the places that we are, the places and times that we are being invited to protect.
All of us are linked by unseen bonds and therefore form a kind of universal family, a sublime communion, which fills us with a sacred, affectionate, and humble respect.
This doesn't mean that we're making the earth divine or denying the primacy of the human being within creation.
A sense of deep communion with the rest of nature cannot be real if our hearts lack tenderness, compassion, and concern for our fellow human beings. Everything is connected.
Everything is connected. The earth is essentially a shared inheritance whose fruits are meant to benefit everyone. And those who possess a part are called to administer it with respect for a social mortgage that applies to all forms of ownership.
Jesus invited his disciples to recognize the paternal relationship God has with all creatures and to live in full harmony with creation without despising the body, the material, or the pleasant things of life.
The destiny of all creation is bound up with the mystery of Christ. And at the end of time, all things will be consigned to the Father.
In this way, the creatures of this world no longer appear to us under a merely natural guise, because the risen one is mysteriously holding them to himself and directing them towards fullness as their end.
And so again, we invite you into discussion, and these are the questions, and we'll share them in your breakout. What stands out to you or challenges you from this chapter? There may still be lingering things from the introduction in the first chapter. So what stands out to you or challenges you? In reflecting on the mystery of the universe, what does Francis mean, do you think, by saying that creation is the order of love? And the Christian, tradition has never recognized the right to private property as absolute or inviolable, and has stressed the social purpose of all forms of private property. That's from paragraph 93 in the encyclical. And so, when can the right to private property be subordinated to the common good in your mind? So these are the questions, these just lighthearted, easy questions that we invite you into. Again, you'll see the countdown timer in your breakout room so that you'll have time to share. And just so you know what comes next, after this breakout, we will have some time to hear from a few people in the large group. We won't be able to hear from everyone, but this will just give us a chance to hear what was happening in a few of the other groups. So with that, we'll go back to our breakout groups. So everyone else will be back in about 7 seconds, but welcome back, or welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Well, I hope that in the second breakout, technology was cooperating with you and there was some fruitful dialogue. Again, I suspect that that time was shorter, that there was more to talk about. And so what we'd like to do for about 10 minutes is just to hear a little bit about what is moving, what is flowing, what thoughts have arisen for you. And so let me say what I'm not asking for. I'm not asking for anyone to summarize any of the conversation in your small group. What I would love to hear is for you to name one thing that feels important to you that you want to remember. And so if you'd like to share, I would invite you to use the raise hand feature. And if you're not sure where to do that, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see something that says reactions. And if you scroll down to that, you'll see a raise hand. And so if you'd like to speak and name something that feels important to you and notable, perhaps it's an insight, an aha, or remembering, I would invite you to raise your hand, and then I'll call on you and invite you to unmute yourself and share. Carol Curtis.
Oh, 88, I think they're quoting maybe from the Brazilian bishops. It said, nature manifests God, but it's also the locus of God's presence. And that the spirit of life dwells in every living creature and calls us to enter into relationship with God. And I think that's kind of a breakthrough in our approach to creation, that it's not just a thing that we make use of or something that we look at, but that it's a presence of God there as well as a manifestation. And so that relationship with God is really coming into right relationship with all of creation, not just as a thing and right use and all those other sustainability kinds of practical things that fit with our economy, on its better days, but genuinely to know the interrelationship of all life, and that caress of God in all of life, that love that moves the universe. That's something that we can experience in relationship with every aspect of creation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, as David said, it's all about relationships and recognizing that reciprocal relationship with the rest of creation. We are part of creation too. Are there others who would like to share something that feels important or notable, or perhaps an aha? You're also welcome to put something in the chat if you don't want to speak. Colleen?
I want to thank you and Jim for giving us the opportunity to learn about and speak about these important things. Our Earth and our universe depends on these sorts of things. And thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Yes, we have a responsibility. John? John, you're on mute.
Yeah, here we go. One of the things that's become more, this could have been written for Americans, gosh, a couple hundred years ago. I mean, we've been, I got things that we've been so intent, just thinking our resources in this land have been limitless, that we've just, abused them in so many ways. And we've neglected the wisdom of those that have been here for so many hundreds of years before us, the Native Americans that, just respected, all of creation, respected the idea that, we don't have private property, respected that all was sacred. And we've just, we responded by trying to pretty much exterminate them and to show them who was boss. It was more powerful, but we've just neglected the wisdom of those that have been settled in this land for so many years before us.
Yeah, I appreciate that naming of other people who can be our teachers as we are hopefully moving towards right relationship again.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Tom?
Yeah, sort of. And I'm not the spokesperson for the group, but a lot of good comments. But one of the general things was sort of what Father John Burke was saying, is we've recognized that we've lost that instinctive recognition of the earth and what that really means. It's not just property for development. And that sort of reflects everything that we see in our current lives, whether it's the pollution or the garbage or the commercialization. And the other thing was more of a visual. One of the members of our group in the background had a green scenario behind him of a piece of property in St. Matthews that is the only remaining acreage in St. Matthews that's left, and it's about ready to be developed. And what a great loss to lose that green space in the neighborhood. So it was good to have a visual, and it was good to have some other reflections on it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Maggie? Maggie, you're on mute.
I was looking, my picture moved. I couldn't find me. I just want to say, I think sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And I'm so excited to see all these people who are here today, all caring and learning about Laudato Si. And I read it in a parish 5 years ago, but sort of nothing happened afterwards. We just read it. And I like that. And sometimes I think you just have to I can do one thing. My one thing is I'm going to advocate this year and our church is never going to have plastic water bottles anymore. That's my goal. And so I think it feels better to know that you're doing one thing. We're also showed the letter, and we're trying to have launch Laudato Si platform, but I think it can be overwhelming when you see everything that needs to be done. And I think for me, I need to stay grounded and just pick one thing that I'm going to do.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And just to name again, we are here and we're doing the work together, and we can do as much as we can do. So thank you for doing that one thing, and the rest of us will do our one thing. So thank you. Janet?
Yes, and Colleen sparked this in me when she used the word universe. And I see us going now to Mars and the other side of the moon, and all the things that we're doing in space. And we're talking about living there in space stations and all of that. And so I guess I wonder if we're going to get it right there. I wonder if we get it enough right here, maybe we won't make the same mistakes there, because other planets, other Milky Ways, other pieces of the universe are also God's creation, God's gift of love to us, if you will, in the same way that this little bitty place is. So I hope we get it right whenever that happens, and that what we're doing here now, and the teachers that are here among us, Sharon was in our group, and she's teaching and she's raising awareness of the students at Holy Cross. And so those of you who have that kind of thing in your hands, in your ability, let's use it well, so that whatever generations follow us, wherever that is in this vast universe, that we don't have to keep going back and doing the same thing over and over again.
Thank you. Yes, yes. I'm noticing the time, and so I think we'll take. I apologize. Well, since we have two hands up, Arden and Sharon, you've had your hands up for a while. So let's hear from Arden and then Sharon, and then we'll close with the same intentionality that we opened with.
I was very impressed with a young woman who joined our group belatedly, who belongs to the Laudato community. And there are families in that community who are trying to develop a communal housing where the property is owned by the people who live there. They think maybe they have room for 10 families. And Joe and I tried to do something like that with just the house that we live in Old Louisville. And things are not set up for that here. And they were having terrible difficulty getting legally making that work. And this is a thing where the ownership thing is so individualized, and we've lost our sense of community.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And this is again why we do this work together, because what we are doing is fortifying, rebuilding, reconstructing that interconnectedness that is. Sharon?
Well, I just wanted to kind of maybe end on a little bit of a positive note with some hope for people. I teach seniors at Holy Cross, and we do spend time talking about, I teach Catholic social teaching, and we spend a great deal of time on care for God's creation through all different ways. And the kids are so aware of climate change and what it means for their future. And they do get overwhelmed. And what I've tried to tell them is, okay, one, what's enough? When's it enough? Like for your consumption of goods. And that helps them to refocus that maybe they don't need that. And then do what you can do. And if everybody does what they can do, then things get done. Don't throw up your hands like, well, it's overwhelming, so I don't have any choice. There's nothing I'll do will matter. Because if we all do something, it matters. So that's what I try to teach my seniors. And I think it's making a difference for them. So fingers crossed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, we all have power. It may not feel like a light, but we all have power. And so with that hopeful note, we're going to end in prayer, and it's an Iroquois prayer.
We return thanks to our mother, the earth, which sustains us.
We return thanks to the rivers and streams which supply us with water.
We return thanks to all our herbs, which furnish medicines for the cure of our diseases.
We return thanks to the corn and her sisters, the beans and squash, which give us life.
We return thanks to the bushes and trees, which provide us with fruit.
We return thanks to our grandfather, Hino, who has given to us the rain.
We return thanks to the sun that has looked upon the earth with a beneficent eye.
Lastly, we return thanks to the Great Spirit, in whom is embodied all goodness and who directs all things for the good of all children. And so with this, we close. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We look forward to seeing you again on February 28th. And just so you know, between now and then, you'll be receiving an email that includes this recording. It will include follow-up resources. It will also include the questions that we invited you into this evening, in case you want to revisit them or even talk about them with other people. We have power as beloved children of God. We have the divine in us and we have power within us. And so I invite us, just as Sharon did, to dream into what is possible, what we can do, and how we might do so together. Thank you all so very, very much. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your evening. And Jim, do you want to say a closing word?
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Corey.
all.